Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my week number 3 tight end start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season, going in depth through every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way up until the doubleheader on Monday Night Football. Tell you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the tight ends in all of those games. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 3 tight end start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the New England Patriots at the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, in this matchup, I am going to give Hunter Henry the nod to be a start. Now, last week, the guy looked like prime Rob Gronkowski up against the Seahawks. He had 8 receptions on 12 targets for 109 yards as the tight end number 2. Now, the question is, do I expect him to get that much volume again, see 12 targets, 10 plus targets? Of course not, but with how spotty the wide receiver core is on this team, I do think that Henry will become a mainstay in this offense, especially since the game plan every single week is going to be run the ball with Ramondre Stevenson and have Jacoby Brissett make easy passes. Don't be forcing the ball 50 yards down the field. Don't be making any crazy decisions. Just throw the ball to the safe players, and Hunter Henry is going to be that for the team. But again, I am very hesitant to truly get down on my knees and give this guy the Gawk Gawk 9,000 special because it has been just one game. Plus, I don't love the matchup up against the Jets, so that puts Henry in fringe top 12 category or being a high-end tight end number 2. Tyler Conklin has the skills. We've seen it. He's been sneaky good over the last couple of seasons, but he has just 2 targets in both games to start off the year. So unless the targets end up spiking upward, we simply can't play Conklin. Next up, we move to the New York Football Giants at the Cleveland Browns. Now, Theo Johnson is very evidently the clear number 1 tight end on the Giants, but he had a grand total of 0 targets last week and has just 1 catch on the season. Against the Cleveland Browns defense, you're obviously not going to want to start that, especially with Danny Dimes under center. Jordan Atkins is going to be a sit as well for the Browns. The report is currently that Njoku is likely out as he missed last week with the ankle injury, which is going to mean that the Pokemon Snake Akins is going to get the start in this game. He had just 1 target last week, and even in a matchup that I believe is positive where Atkins could have a big game, I frankly don't want to play him, especially because his quarterback is this guy named Deshaun Watson. Next up, we move to the Green Bay Packers at the Tennessee Titans. Now, going into the year, there was a debate. Will it be Musgrave? Will it be Kraft? And I was kind of on the wrong side of the argument. I thought it was going to end up being Musgrave. The tight end number 1 on this team clearly is Tucker Kraft Mac and Cheese. While Jordan Love did practice today, and even if the guy miraculously rises from the dead like The Undertaker, I still cannot start Kraft. He simply doesn't see enough targets. The team has too many cooks in the kitchen. They have Christian Watson. They have Romeo Doubs. They have Jaden Riley-Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Bo Melton. There are too many guys that can catch passes on this team for me to want to start Kraft. Chig Okonkwo is going to be a sit as well. He has yet to eclipse the 10-point total mark on the season and is averaging just 2.5 targets per game. While he did find the end zone in week number 1, you can't expect him to score touchdowns being that low on the totem pole in terms of touches on the team. Plus, the team isn't even that good. So being low on the totem pole and having Will fucking Levis as your starting quarterback normally isn't going to lead to much success. I do really think Chig is a talented player, but skill doesn't always necessarily lead to actual involvement in the offense or even fantasy points, so he is a clear sit. Next up, we move to the Chicago Bears at the Indianapolis Colts. Now, Cole Kmet saw a healthy target share on Sunday Night Football up against the Texans, and with Keenan Allen potentially on the out again, missing this week, Kmet could be a start. But notice how I say could, right? Because this is not a great scenario for Kmet. Even with Allen potentially being out, even with Odunze banged up, even with Kmet being such a talented tight end, there is a huge but in this conversation. Shout out AJ Applegate. And that is Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams has been shooting blanks weekly, so I just can't trust Kmet just yet. Kylan Granson's a sit. He splits tight end snaps with Mo Money, Mo Cox, Mo Alley Cox, and I expect him to play around 55 to 60% of the snaps this week. He is just a 1 to 2 target a week guy at max, and with just 1 touchdown in his NFL career through 4 seasons, he belongs on the waivers. Next up, we move to the Houston Texans at the cold like Minnesota Vikings. Now, if you are in a rough spot, I could see Schultz having a good enough game to be start worthy, but the guy is on an offense with too many weapons, just like we talked about with Tucker Kraft, right? When you have Diggs, Collins, Hank Dell, it's just too many mouths to feed in this offense. Schultz is a very good tight end. On other teams, we would be given the Sukalamink special to Dalton Schultz, but because he's on the Texans, his upside and is there. I guess the upside really is there, obviously, because of how good the offense is, but the floor is the basement because the targets really aren't there. Johnny Munt appears to be the guy in Minnesota. And while Sam Darnold is dicing defenses up like a fucking tomato, Munt hasn't done much. He's averaging 3 targets a game, and that won't make me want to start you. Next up, we move to the Philadelphia Eagles at the New Orleans Saints. Now, Dallas Goedert has looked good this season, but he has failed to find the end zone, which is something I talked about all summer. Dallas Goedert is going to be very safe. He's going to feel like wrapping that Trojan around your team weekly, but the upside is heavily limited by the fact that the guy needs a map to get into the end zone. But without A.J. Brown, it definitely gives Goddard a boost up in my confidence scale because the touchdowns are a lot more likely to come his way in this scenario. Now, I don't love the matchup, but due to his ranking in the hierarchy in the offense now without A.J. Brown, plus how good the Eagles' offense is, Goddard should be ranked inside of the top 10, but he is definitely ranked closer to tight end 10 than he is tight end 5. Juwan Johnson's a sit, as is the threesome, the trio of tight ends in New Orleans. Taysom Hill was hospitalized with a chest injury on Sunday and did not practice today. Dennis Allen is hopeful he will practice on Thursday. If he does play, that would be a shot in the heart to Juwan Johnson's value. But even if Hill missed, the team's also still going to use Foster Moreau. And while the Saints offense is a certified wagon, while the Saints offense could put up a huge point total up against the Philadelphia Eagles, you can't play any of the tight ends. Next up, we move to the Los Angeles Superchargers at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pat Freiermuth went 4 for 4 in back-to-back games, which is promising for his upside. He has yet to fall outside the top 14, so at the very least, you're going to get 7 to 8 fantasy points, but the upside isn't really the highest because with Justin Fields under center and with the game plan being what it is, I just don't really see Freiermuth popping off and having the tight end 5 performance unless he scores multiple touchdowns, because it's not like magically Freiermuth's going to have the 8 to 10 target game. I really don't see it happening. He's probably going to get 4 targets for potentially 35 to 40 yards. If he scores a touchdown, you'll be happy. If not, he's just a fine high-end tight end 2. Hayden Hurst was limited on practice on Wednesday with an ankle injury. Him and Disley basically split this backfield 50-50 of the tight end room 50-50 in terms of snaps. On such a run-heavy team, though, that doesn't heavily utilize the tight end position, you should not be playing Hayden Hurst. Next up, we move to the Denver Broncos at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the final game before we move to the 4 o'clock slate. That is Greg Dulcich versus Cade Otton. And last week, third leg Greg had 8 targets up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. but that only resulted in 3 receptions for 16 yards. And I've talked multiple times this season about how I believe that Dulcich is a great player and that if things do go right, he could be a very viable fantasy football tight end, potentially a top 5 fantasy football tight end. But with the quarterback play out of Bo Nix, you definitely don't want to be playing him, even if he's getting 5+ targets a game. If they're not super accurate, what's even the point? Cade Otton is another one of those guys where it's the classic tale, George Orwell, of being on a team that's good, but he doesn't really get a big piece of the pie because they have Evans, Godwin, Rachaad White, and Jalen McMillan. There are just too many cooks in the kitchen here, and there's only one football, so Cade Otton belongs on the bench. Next up, we move to the 4 p.m. slate, the Carolina Panthers at the Las Vegas Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. Now, Brock Bowers has been a top 3 tight end in back-to-back games, making the rookies can't be good in tight end in fantasy football because they're tight ends. Don't you know that, Nick? It looks incredibly stupid now. This is a great spot up against the Panthers defense, and with Bowers seeing around 8 targets a week, I think he could easily find himself as the tight end numero uno this week at home in Viva Las Vegas. Ja'Tavion Sanders is going to be a sit. Now, changing to Andy Dalton could cause a seismic shift on how we view the Panthers players for fantasy football going forward. With that said, though, I don't think we should be ready to gargle on the nuts of Andy Dalton. And I also don't think that even if Andy Dalton comes in there and looks like how he looked for that one game last year, that would widely change my opinion on Ja'Tavion Sanders. He's a rookie. I know, Nick, Brock Bowers is a rookie, but he's a rookie that's not involved in the offense. He is a very clear sit. Next up, we move to game number 10. Shout out to Ben 10, of course, that is. Miami Dolphins at the Seattle Seahawks. Now, Noah Fant is one of the most underrated tight ends in the National Football League. But if the Seahawks continue to use the guy like a cum rag, you can't play him. He does not see enough volume. They've got JSN, Lockett, Metcalf. They've got the running back. So it's kind of just Fant's the odd man out. Jadu Smith, I do believe, as a Dolphins fan, that this week's game plan could be heavy on Jonnu Smith due to Tua Tagovailoa being on IR and Skylar Thompson being under center. Last week, Jonnu was really the only Dolphins player outside of Achane that actually fucking did something. 6 receptions on 7 targets for 53 yards. But this team also uses multiple tight ends. And my preconceived notion on Skylar Thompson as a Dolphins fan is that he can't play ball. So starting Jonnu would be foolish as of right now, but if he has a big game this week, which I think is possible, we might want to start him going forward until Tua returns. Next up, we got the Baltimore Ravens at the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to be starting all 3 tight ends in this game. Jake Ferguson was back in practice on Wednesday from his knee injury. That made him miss week number 2. Now, I am as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, but I, for one, know that MCL sprains are no bueno. They are not very good. The expectation is that he does play in this game, but I am going to be much lower on him compared to normal, where he feels like a stone cold lock to be top 10 in my rankings because of the injury. He is a fringe start at best for me, as I feel as though he is not going to see his normal allotment of snaps. Now, if Fat Mike McCarthy comes out and says, oh, Jake Ferguson's good to go, 100% healthy, then yeah, I'll bump him up the rankings. But where we're sitting on Wednesday, I don't necessarily believe that will be the case. I do not believe that to be true. So for the Ravens, I'm starting both Andrews and Likely. Now, Andrews was locked up like P. Diddy in week number 1 up against the Chiefs, though he did play a lot better up against the Raiders last week. 4 receptions on 5 targets for 51 yards. While that definitely is not on par with our expectations for Andrews, I still expect him to continue to get better and better. As of right now, you can't sit him, so I'll keep rolling him out as a top 10 option, but he has lost his top 5 status in my minds. Now, Isaiah Likely was as quiet as a mouse in week 2 after a monstrous week 1 performance up against the Chiefs. Shout out to Nosferatu. I still have high beliefs in Likely's ability, his skill set weekly, and will continue to rank him inside the top 12 until his snap share ends up dipping. And that may end up happening, but I hope it doesn't. Next up, we move to game number 12, the 49ers at the Los Angeles Rams. Without Deebo Samuel for the foreseeable future, I expect George Kittle to step up in a big way. Back-to-back solid performances out of Kittle. Last week, he had the Vikings defense bent over the sink. 7 receptions on 8 targets for 76 yards and a score as the tight end number 1. This week up against the Rams, who just got Hulk smashed by Kyler McBride and Maserati Marv, Kittle should be in for another top 5 performance. Now, Kobe Parkinson is a bottom of the barrel start. Now, he is the clear number 1 tight end on the team, and with Kupp and Puka out, that will lead to Stafford looking more to Kobe Parkinson. Though, there is a clear issue. Anyone with eyes can see it, okay? And that is that the Rams' offensive line sucks ass, and they are splitting open like how Moses split the Red Sea. It is a turnstile offensive line, and that's going to lead to Matthew Stafford getting jacked up in this game. And with little time to throw, we could see Parkinson get fed. But ultimately, if he doesn't have time to throw, he might not even be able to get the ball to Parkinson, so Parkinson might be down bad, which makes him a lower level start. Next up, we move to the Detroit Lions at the Arizona Cardinals, the final 4 o'clock game before we get on into the primetime matchups. Before we get on into the rest of the games here, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. If you are new to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description, you'll be able to claim your free pick, Aaron Rodgers higher than half a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So if you are new to Underdog Fantasy, you pick the higher on Aaron Rodgers total half of a yard, and then you match that with any other picks from Thursday Night Football, Sunday Football, or on Monday, and if both of those picks hit, you receive 3 times your entry fee. The payout goes up the more picks you add to your pick'em entry. Again, promo code Notorious for a free pick like Aaron Rodgers higher than half a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, they're both must start. Shocker, right? If you add them, you already fucking knew that was going to be the case. Now, Trey McBride, out of all of the tight ends that we drafted in a somewhat early fashion, he's the only one that's actually been showing up. Back-to-back top 12 games out of him, and he was the tight end for last week up against the Rams, 6 for 6 for 67 yards. Him and Marvin Harrison are an elite duo like Shaq and Kobe, and I fully expect McBride to continue to be one of the most reliable and highest upside tight ends in fantasy. This matchup reeks of points, and I think McBride should easily finish inside of the top 3. Now, Laporta has been the opposite of McBride. You know, while McBride week 1 didn't fucking slap the defense up, right? He didn't have a huge showing. Laporta's had a slow start to the season, but at least the targets have been there. Goff has not played great, and that has in turn catapulted the weekly value of Laporta. This matchup has all the makings, though, of a high-scoring game, and I believe this will be the best game out of Laporta yet. He is still a must-start tight end. I'm not giving up just yet. Next up, we move to "Cause You Waited All Day for Sunday Night," the Kansas City Chiefs at the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Mr. Swift, Travis Kelce, if you drafted him in the late 2nd, early 3rd round, has me feeling like I got absolutely fisted without the use of lube. Back-to-back duds, as Rashee Rice is the clear focal point in this offense. But now without Isaiah Pacheco, I expect Kelce to be a whole lot more involved, as they should just be throwing the rock more. Last year, Kelce started slow as well, so I won't panic yet. He is still a must-start tight end, but my patience is basically wearing very thin. Kyle Pitts is a start. Kirk Cousins looked far better in week 2 compared to the opening game. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Kim Kardashian, Pitts had a better game in week 1. I do think this game will be higher scoring, and Pitts should have a respectable top 12 game. Next up, we move to the first of two Monday Night Football games, the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Buffalo Bills, a rematch from, I believe, a game last year that was in London. Evan Ingram missed last week with the hamstring injury that he suffered in warmups, which was a huge blow to Ingram owners as you had to just panic pick him up. It almost feels a lot better, pause, when you get to wait or you hear about the injury the week before and you're like, you know what, he's gonna miss, so it's okay. I've accepted that I have to play this fucking bum at tight end off waivers, but after Ingram gets hurt and then you have to make that decision within an hour, it definitely hurts a lot more. Knowing that this game is on Monday, I would expect him to play. Doug Peterson said today that he was optimistic that he will play. I will lower my expectations, though, as hamstring injuries are really tricky, and he could easily just not look like himself or not play the correct amount of snaps that we're used to. You're still definitely going to start him, but I'm not going to rank him inside the top 12. Dalton Kincaid, after paying a top 6 round pick for Kincaid, it's been rough sledding out here. Tight end 14 last week against the Fins in Miami. 4 for 4 for 33 yards. I'm not jumping ship after those two performances as a top 2 target on the field for the Bills. Let's hope that we see a better outcome here for Kincaid. He's still going to be a top 8 tight end, though, for me. Next up, we move to the final game here. The left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders at the Cincinnati Bengals. Back-to-back weeks with 4 targets. Last week against the Giants, he went 4 for 4 like he was at Wendy's for 62 yards. While he is far from his old self, he is a complete and utter different tight end at this point. He doesn't look the same as he used to. He's still at least involved enough in the offense to be start-worthy, and with how spotty the tight end play has been and with the injuries to Ferguson and Ingram, Zach Ertz may honestly end up being a low-end tight end 1 on the week for me. Mike Likiamagasicki has been incredibly involved in this Bengals offensive attack. 7 receptions on 9 targets for 91 yards last week as the tight end 5. Now, I don't expect as great of a game this week, but the matchup is definitely ripe for the taking, and I definitely think he could get it done. He is in the exact same range as Ertz. I think Ertz is a lot safer. Gesicki has more upside, though, because Gesicki isn't 8,000 years old. Gesicki's value, though, would take a hit if Higgins ends up returning. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you would like to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your guys' day. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you guys all so much. Have a great one. And as always, good boy.